for you?
Yeah, your volume is perfect. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rock and Recovery. I'm your host, Jay. And today I got a special guest. Not only that, I just want everybody out there to know all we're trying to do is give you a little bit of hope. And to me, hope is hold on, pain ends. Because, as long as we have hope, as long as there's a light at the end of the tunnel, not all is lost. So don't worry. As long as you got hope, anything can happen. So thank you, Connard, for being here. Author Connard Hogan is here to share whatever he has to share. I don't know. We're going to find out. So go for it, Connard.
And I will too.
Yeah.
I don't have a canned speech.
I mean, I don't have any questions. I just listen and just ask questions along the way. So I'm going to be the passenger. You're going to be driving right now.
All right. Super. Well, thanks for having me, Jay. Everyone has a unique story. I have a unique story regarding my connection to drug and alcohol addiction. I grew up with a father who now looking back, I consider had PTSD from World War II in the Pacific Theater. At that time, in the 1950s, there was no treatment for PTSD. I don't even think that diagnosis had been created yet. He binge drank on Friday nights after he got his paycheck. My mother was not working at the time. She took care of myself and my brother. And she would warn him, cajole him, and tell him he shouldn't be spending his money on drinking because we needed the money to pay things like the electric bill and the mortgage on the house, etc. However, he would go into a rage many times, and that would result in some physical abuse. And my brother and I were witness to that. So I grew up witnessing the physical abuse and the dysfunction of, I consider, alcoholism. Now, I didn't call it alcoholism until much later, but I do think even if it's not full blown, and at that time, everybody thought alcoholism meant you were in the gutter, constantly inebriated, et cetera, et cetera. So certainly nobody in my family said it out loud that was alcoholism, but I do believe it was. Nevertheless, I grew up as an ACOA, adult child. Now I'm now an adult child of an alcoholic. So I'm dealing with my trauma, or have dealt with it. Not that it's over, not that I'm not continuing to deal with it, with that those childhood experiences.
How did that affect you going into adulthood? How did that affect you as a child, having to grow up and witness that in your parents?
Very good question. And it's not one that I consider it's simply answered. I think I would have been more extroverted had it not been for those experiences. I was probably, 7, 8 years old until maybe 15 or 16, experiencing those things. And I learned from watching it. It was a very scary experience. I learned to keep my mouth shut and try to stay out of the way. So it drove me to build a kind of a wall around myself to protect myself, to be quiet, to kind of became more introverted and
technical difficulty. I think because I cannot hear you again, you're frozen. I don't know if that's my side or your side, but let's see if it comes out of it. And until then, Connard is sharing his story about growing up as an alcoholic. Growing up in an alcoholic household And we're back. Okay, great.
Yeah. So I learned to be very careful and cautious about speaking up. I certainly didn't want to confront my father, so that made me more timid. That was one thing. The second is I was very concerned that he would kill my mother. So looked for ways that I could try to support or help her. That left me, I think, very cautious about relationships with other people. And because that was their dance, they weren't teaching me how to appropriately express or deal with my feelings. So I didn't know how to deal with anger any other way than what was being shown to me. So I've had struggles with that my entire life. What else? I think I lost the video of you. I hope we're still connected.
We are.
We're still here. Okay. Boy, I'll tell you, that's about all I can think of at the moment. I'm sure there's other things, but being cautious about relationships.
So very introverted.
Yeah. I've somewhat grown to be less introverted, like example, being on the podcast here with you today and and some of that I think has to do with what happened later. Let me go on with the story here. As I grew up, I wanted to be an astronaut. That didn't work because my eyes went bad. I needed glasses. I had to give up on that dream when I was in engineering school, hoping to become a aeronautical engineer, blah, blah. Dropped out, ended up being drafted, went to the Army. While I was in Vietnam, I gravitated more toward being a social worker. So came back and studied sociology in undergraduate school, then went on to get a master's in marriage, family, child counseling in California, became licensed and spent 25 years as a licensed counselor here in California. And my first full-time job was with a drug and alcohol treatment agency with their co-ed adult residential facility. And I worked there several years. Then I transferred to their male adolescent residential facility. And they worked on a model with Gestalt therapy and 12-step recovery. So I became exposed to the 12 steps, actually accompanied many on a weekly basis, all of the adults in that facility to a 12-step meeting. So I attended a lot of meetings, learned a lot about 12 steps. And we also had what we called self-assessment groups for the staff at the adult facility. So the staff would get together, talk about our issues using that Gestalt model, focusing on feelings, usually facilitated by the clinical director. And over that period of time, I did a whole lot of processing of my emotions. And I've come to believe that pain is pain, no matter where it comes from. It all goes into the same bucket. So if you're processing pain of one thing, that either helps you process pain from something else, or it's processing the pain of something else simultaneously. So those two experiences help. And in the late 70s, there was EST, one of the Human Potentials Movements programs. And I attended that and discovered or learned a few things about myself at that point. And actually during that seminar, got to the point where I could actually feel like I could accept myself. In other words, gain self-esteem.
Right.
So there's a kind of a nutshell rambling of my upbringing, but wherever we need to go from there is fine.
So you said you're in the military. And
yes.
How did that affect you on a mental health level? Because I know you weren't, you were never an addict. So how did that affect you on a mental health level?
Well, let's see. I was drinking, experimenting with alcohol when I was a teenager. So that continued on. But when I was
Would you ever call yourself like an alcoholic? Would you ever put that label on it?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Or was it more just experimenting?
Well, it's experimental, but I do binge occasionally with friends on a weekend or some such. But I've never had major problems with that. I did end up in the military. I went to Vietnam, did get exposed to marijuana, and then later experimented with a few drugs like LSD a few times. But I always tended to want to recreate on the edges. So when I was using LSD, I would get a tab and cut it in quarters maybe and take a quarter or not more than a half for sure. I always had that enough caution and self-discipline not to overdo it.
Man, I remember
So
some bad trips on that stuff. I'll tell
yeah,
you what. I mean, hallucinations. Yeah, there's a bunch of those.
yeah.
I can only
Um,
imagine what it would have been like there.
Yeah, the problem with the street drugs, as you know, and many do, is you can't control the quantity or the dosage. So without knowing, you can get into a bad experience really quickly. So exposed to marijuana there, but the main trauma for me, I was not in combat in Vietnam. I wasn't in the infantry. In orientation camp after I'd first been drafted. Before I went to basic training, they gave us a pep talk. They said, and I suspect all of us were draftees at that point. We were given a pep talk and told, you can take a test, an aptitude test, to determine what you're going to do in the Army, what your MOS, military occupational status, is going to be. If you enlist for 3 years, we can guarantee you'll get that MOS.
Right.
And otherwise, if you don't, you're going to go to Vietnam in the infantry. And I did not want to go to Vietnam in the infantry. So I took the test, enlisted, became an intelligence analyst. And when I was in Vietnam, I was assigned to 2 Corps headquarters in the Trang, which was right on the beach.
Okay.
If you think of the program China Beach, kind of like that, right on the beach.
All right.
We didn't see combat. But my trauma of the whole thing was I didn't know if I was going to get shot at any moment. We did have at one point, the last 6 months of my deployment there, we were billeted on the edge of the airport, right on the front edge, and beyond us was swamp and whatnot. And occasionally at night, we would have would be bombarded by a mortar attack. So I could have gotten hit by a mortar. One time I had a rocket go right over me before it crashed into a huge fuel tank, a Katusha rocket. So I always on edge, wondering if I'm going to get wounded. And there was some stupid things I did. We had an opportunity to go at first 6 months from where we were billeted on the headquarters compound downtown in the Trang. I mean, we went to bars and brothels and whatnot. And who knows? At times I thought I could get shot or somebody could stab me in the back at any moment. So my trauma was the constant tension and worry about my demise.
That had to take a toll on your everyday actions.
Yes. It built up over time. Now I can't say, I'm not comparing it to anyone else's trauma, but I do think everyone had some trauma in some form or fashion in Vietnam.
Did you take away PTSD from that?
Well, I didn't have severe reactions. I think it all kind of folded into the trauma from childhood, like feeling helpless and being triggered when I felt like I was being demeaned or I didn't have control of a situation, that I would react with anger. I think it kind of folded into all that. As I said earlier, pain of this and pain of that are not any different because it all goes into the same bucket. I think it kind of added to that. However, it wasn't to the degree that anywhere near diagnosis of PTSD.
How did you manage? How'd you manage that pain? How'd you manage those traumas to get to where you're at now? How do you manage?
Well, I think one thing that helped me a lot in that first job that I had, I mentioned, which was at a drug and alcohol treatment facility. We had what we called self-assessment groups for the staff. And there was a lot of processing of issues about how are you dealing with this client, or what happened in this meeting and that, but it all kind of folds together as far as pain of one thing is related to pain of another. So if you're processing pain, it's all connected somehow deeper down.
Right.
And so I did a lot of processing there. In my, jumping back a little bit, experience about 12-step recovery, I think that following those steps, first thing, you have to own it to yourself. Then you have to talk to someone else. At some point, it would help to own it to your higher power if you have one, or whatever that higher power is, and then to talk to others, such as in a group. Ultimately, thinking is one level, talking is another level, and writing is another level altogether. So one thing I've done since my retirement is to write. And I've written 2 memoirs, and they're back behind me here. The first one, the yellow, is my childhood experience growing up. And the second one in the red there, whoops, I can't point very well here. Okay, is my Vietnam experience. So I think writing about it puts it out there at a different level than talking, because this word, my word, in these books is available to people that I will never meet, never see, never talk to. Maybe I would expect beyond my demise, they'll have opportunity to look at that. So I'm connecting to people on that level, and in a sense, purging some of that in my writing.
So is that the way you kind of just let it go?
Yeah, as best I can. I think trying to have a bigger picture, which I've always attempted to do or aspire to do, I try to look at the bigger picture of things too, in the sense of letting it go. Well, another issue is, I mentioned est. I learned in est that I don't have to consider myself or identify myself as my feelings nor my thoughts. I have feelings, I have thoughts, but they're not me. So they can come and go. And that harkens to the Buddhist approach of thoughts coming by like a freight train, let's say. After a while, it passes on. You don't have to react to it, such as feelings, neither. You don't have to act upon them. And I think that also helps let it go and to back away from the intensity and the reactivity of it, or of trauma.
How long did it take you in practice to actually not just practice that, but live that letting it go, that letting things just go by?
Well, I don't know that I'm done. It's not an
Yeah,
event, it's a process. So it's like every day I work to it, and I don't want to use the word try. I attempt and work at practicing being aware of the thoughts and feelings as they come. However, traumatic experiences create triggers, and a trigger doesn't come in a thought, it comes in as a reaction. So I'm work to be aware of those reactions, to stop myself. It's not like counting to 10, but it's similar to the process to say, wait a minute, I'm not my thought, I'm not my feeling, and I don't have to act this way. I can watch them as they dissipate or move on by and go to something else.
Yeah. So, in essence, what was the inspiration behind your 2 memoirs?
Um,
And can you
origin,
tell us a little bit about what they're about?
sure. Originally, I was started climbing. Well, I was spelunking as a adolescent in Kentucky. There's lots of caves there. Limestone, it's mother lode country.
Limestone caves, that's
Mother
the best
lode,
state for it.
mother lode of caves. So anyway, climbing in essence inside out. But when I came to California, there are some caves, caverns, but they're more serious and there's fewer, and many more mountains and higher. So that morphed into climbing mountains. And when I was climbing about in 1986 or 7 and planning to go climbed Denali in Alaska, I thought, well, and I like to read about my childhood heroes and their adventures. They were always adventurers, going to the North South Pole or climbing mountains or whatever. I thought that maybe I could write. So I kept a journal of that climb, and then later on started keeping journals. After a few of those, I said, I think I can put it together and write a book. Couldn't tell you exactly why, except I felt the need to put myself more out there. And maybe that was because I had learned to be more introverted and have a wall up. That was one way I felt I could connect. Started taking some writing classes, going to writing conferences, whatnot. Then around, I don't know, mid 90s, started writing in one of the classes something about my childhood. Well, maybe I can write a book about that. So started working on a manuscript about that. Then later, my manuscript about, I think that's reversed actually. I started working on my manuscript about Vietnam. All the time, it was like I felt like this is going to help me share myself and put what's inside on the outside, turn myself inside out. And I've been a proponent of being honest and truthful. Doesn't mean I have a secret here and there. Doesn't mean I need to share everything. However, I think honesty is the best policy, and it can be painful, but I don't believe that being honest is a weakness. It's a strength. So if you're showing your weakness, what you call weakness to other people, I don't think that's a negative thing. I think that's a good thing. You just want to be careful about how other people react to it. You don't want to open yourself up to more trauma. And if that occurs, then you just move away from those people and gravitate towards people who will accept you for who you are, support you, and give you positive interaction. Later on, when COVID lockdown occurred, and I hadn't been published yet. I decided I wanted to get published. So I had my Kentucky Farm, Once Upon a Kentucky Farm manuscript published at that point. And then within about a year, I got my Barbed Wire, Brothels, and Bombs in the Night Vietnam memoir published. Now, now I'm working on the third one, which is my climbing manuscript. And the intended title is A Journey of Courage in the Climb Within. The Once Upon a Kentucky Farm is about my experiences of watching and witnessing my parents' dysfunctional relationship and visiting my mother's parents' subsistence farm in Upton, which was 60 miles away from where we lived in Louisville, usually about 60 miles. And so the chapters go back and forth between nuclear family and extended family. And the glory of going to the farm was there was a big family there. We'd have big gatherings at Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. So a lot of interaction. There was a lot of people. My mother had 9 siblings or 8 siblings, I think. A lot of people that I could pull role modeling examples from, including my grandparents. My grandmother, my youngest uncle, as well as my mother, provided a lot of unconditional love for me. And I think that was very healthy and helped me pull me through those experiences. And just being on the farm, being around nature and animals, collecting eggs out of a chicken's nest, picking strawberries, picking watermelons, tomatoes, eating them off the vine, helping grow, cultivate tobacco, hunting for rabbits and squirrels, etc., was really my saving grace. So that book alternates between those two environments, my nuclear family home and my extended family, particularly my mother's parents. Now, my father's parents I love too, and they love me, but they moved around. And it's not until more recently that I learned there was something magical about having the location be the same place that I would go to. It's like it provided some kind of roots. So I can understand why people are territorial, why they don't want to move away from their ancestral homeland, let's say. Though I did immigrate from Kentucky to California, I chose to do that. But there was still that important connection for me, that location, while I was a child. Okay. My Vietnam book. I think I might have mentioned I was drafted. I enlisted to become an intelligence analyst, went to Vietnam, spent a year at 2 Corps headquarters in Nha Trang. Safest place I thought I could be. Nevertheless, I was traumatized because I didn't know if I was going to get shot or wounded at any minute, what would happen from one day to the next. I was young when I went. Just had turned 20, I guess, when I was drafted. And so when I went to Vietnam in June of 69, I was still 20. I turned 21 within a few months. And I had gone there as a virgin. As I mentioned, I was introverted. I didn't know how to talk to girls. I didn't have any serious relationships in high school. And I, by golly, didn't want to die a virgin. So I decided I would fix that real quick. So I ended up going to visit prostitutes and brothels and did that. Went to a few bars, have some drinking. Most of the time we drank on base at the enlisted men's club. But I didn't get too much into that. And then I was introduced to marijuana and did some smoking, but I never got into it enough to go really want to buy it or whatnot. It was, to me, more, as I mentioned earlier, skirting the edge, kind of recreational usage. Then after my tour there, I was assigned to Fort Bragg in North Carolina and spent about a year and 2 months there before I had an early discharge, honorable. And my anger at that point started really growing, being dissatisfied with the Army. And so once probably had some suicidal ideation while I was there, but it didn't arise seriously until after I was discharged, before I returned to undergraduate school. So within about a couple of months after I was discharged, I one evening was drinking and had an incident where a guy wanted me to drive him home, and it pissed me off. And so when I'm driving my car, I sped up going over an icy bridge and totaled it.
Wow.
At that point, I realized I was pretty suicidal, but I didn't really act on that so much until after I'd gone in and started undergraduate school. After some months, I was dating a girl who said, I was too introverted. She didn't like that, wanted to go off to greener pastures. And then I got suicidal. I knew at that point I probably couldn't handle it alone. So I reached out at the campus medical center, and the doc there set me up with an appointment for counseling. So I started counseling at that point. That helped me over a period of 9 months, maybe 12 months. I'm not sure exactly how long it was. Helped me get over that process of having those feelings and whatnot. And at that point, I was pretty secure within myself that that wasn't going to happen again, because I had weathered it once and kind of knew what to do to avoid it. So my third book is about my climbing experiences, focusing on my fear of heights. And I have a fictional character, though it's not fictional in a sense, from the psychotherapy.
So let me get this straight. You've climbed mountains, yet you've got a fear of heights.
Yes.
Okay.
And
makes sense.
I was a peak bagger, which meant I was happy getting to the summit the easiest way possible.
So how many of the 14ers in the Rockies or in Colorado did you do, if any?
I don't know that I did any 14. Well, I must have done, I did the high point, Mount Elbert, I believe it is, but I don't know the height. I thought that was 13,000. It maybe it's got to be 14. That's the only one I've done.
Okay.
I focused on California, and I've done all of those, although there's a kind of an issue about which There was one not considered a 14er when I was climbing, and that's Starlight Peak, which is part of Thunderbolt. But aside from that, I did the 14ers in California, and then some of the other. I've gone to the highest point in every state. Many of those are drive. Some are drive ups, some are walk ups, but some are serious climbing. Not really that technical, but they could result in some serious accidents. And I did have one serious accident in the Palisade Glacier area, attempting polymonium, which was the shortest of the 14ers in California at the time. I think it took me 4 or 5 tries to achieve the summit of that one. Nevertheless, writing about my climbing experiences, and I fictionalized the fear of my height, my fear of heights, with a character I call Primate, which is more like an id. And if you're familiar with psychotherapy, Freudian psychotherapy, the id is the basic primal parts of us, the instinctual or the drives and urges that we have, whereas the ego is the part of us, conscious part of us, that does things, makes choices to keep us alive. The superego is the morality level. So anyway, Primate is my id as far as my fear of heights. So I'm constantly battling and conversing internally with Primate during these experiences. So it's not a traditional mountain climbing adventure. It's a crossover between a memoir and an outdoor adventure. And I'm working on giving feedback to the publisher now about the interior format, the
Wow.
text. I'm hoping to have that out in a few months, but it may take, 6 months, who knows. Anyway, that's another way I'm putting that out there. My fear of heights, I think, I don't know, I probably picked that up from my dad. He had a fear of heights. Though, ironically, at times, as a carpenter, he would re-roof houses. And I would help him as an adolescent at some point. And I probably picked it up from him. But it was like just having that, I don't know, awareness above and beyond. You don't want to just fall off the edge of something, but above and beyond, it's like, oh, this is the edge. Be careful. Right. I think I picked it up from him. But there were motivations and reasons for me to climb, and I spell those out in the book as well. Many varied motivations. Amongst other things, I wanted to be like my childhood heroes. And I wanted to be, I wanted to have that acclaim, that recognition.
Right.
Now, I never got it in that sense. However, I think I earned it or got it by accepting myself, that I was worthy, that I was a true explorer.
Do you think the climbing, the mountaineering helped you along with dealing with coping with your everyday traumas and mental health?
Well, I certainly suspect it did. As I say, pain is pain. Everything is lumped together in that bucket that we have. So courage to deal with this can be applied to courage to deal with that.
Right.
So, yes, I do think so. Yeah.
Well, what's one of what are your books titles, and where can people find them?
Once Upon a Kentucky Farm.
Okay.
Subtitled Hope and Healing from Family Abuse, Alcoholism, and Dysfunction. The second one, Barbed Wire, Brothels, and Bombs in the Night. Subtitled Surviving Vietnam. The third one, I do not believe the title will change. I've changed it a number of times to this point. Will be A Journey of Courage and the Climb Within, subtitled Mountaineering Adventures. They all will be on Amazon. You can connect to that or read something about them on my website, connardhogan.com.
I looked at your website. I like that Winston. I think it was Winston Churchill quote that you had up there.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember it right off, but I knew it was. I'm pretty sure it was Winston Churchill.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great quote.
Yeah, I've really learned a little bit more about him. Not a whole lot. I don't know that most people now would appreciate him for what he did during World War II, but he had a good sense of wit, and he was a fairly intelligent guy, I think. I came across some of his quotes a few years ago, and I really like the one you're referring to. Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision.
Yeah.
So I included it on my webpage for that reason. I don't know if I had a follow-up to that point, but I just wanted to respond to your comment about it.
What's one of the takeaways you want anybody listening out there to take away from this?
I think, well, there's probably a lot. However, I think there's a few points that we can all learn from. One is that no matter if you're an addict, a drug addict, or an alcoholic, or if you have another identified addiction, all of us can learn something and apply the 12 steps to our lives to help enrich ourselves, no matter. One, you don't have to live alone. You would know this, stinking thinking. You don't have to deal with it by yourself, regardless. Trauma in general, or trauma from anything else, you don't have to deal with it alone. Go talk to somebody you can trust. Seek out other people who understand you and can accept you. Okay, that's a second one. The third one is unconditional love is a healer. Find people who will accept you for who you are. You'll find that in 12-step meetings, but you'll find it in therapy, and you'll find it in other places, maybe from your grandmother if she's living, or your mother, or whomever. But find someone who will accept you for who you are. That's very important.
I think that's one of the most important, because, you know, if people are expecting something out of you, if they accept you because of what you can do instead of who you are, you're hanging around the wrong people.
Yeah. You're more likely, if that's the case, you're more likely to disappoint them at some point, and then you're out the door, so to speak. But you're not going to get that reaction, that return of connectivity with somebody who wants something from you,
right?
Rather than just accepting you for who you are. There are some other things I can go on about, but I think I mentioned 3 or 4. It's probably good.
I think the biggest thing is be around people that want to see you succeed. No matter what you're doing in life, that want to see you succeed, not for any other reason other than they want to see you living your best life.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Now, I would also add, you can sign up for a quarterly newsletter that I write. Go to my website. You can sign up for it there. You can leave me comments, which I'm open to. I do blog about my world travel with my wife. I have a humorous twist on that. I entitle those "A Few Lesser Known and Obscure Facts I Learned While In." Those are not travel logs per se, but they're just interesting tidbits here and there that I think are humorous, hopefully. And then I blog about my hiking on the Pacific Crest Trail. I'm now up to about a total of 875 miles. That's sectional hiking, not through hiking, of course.
I had a guest on here that did the Appalachian Trail in his 70s. He was also a Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
And he suffered with a severe PTSD and addiction, you know, and he said him and his brother walked parts of the Appalachian Trail, almost all of it. And he wrote a book with basically taking pictures along the way. It's a great read. If anybody, you know, if you might have to look him up. but he's a very inspiring person.
Yeah. I would mention another important thing. Being in nature can be very healing because nature is unconditional.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
going to do what nature does. It's going to, whether you're there or not,
It's
you
not going to
know,
judge you.
no, that's right.
It's not going to judge you.
I moved from Colorado to Florida to get away from the situation, people, places, and things. You have to change them in recovery. And I
Yeah.
moved to Florida for that. And I found some of the best people I've ever known, will probably ever know here in Florida, some of the best country,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So, yeah, it's very healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I can go on and on about things. It's just whatever crops up next. Whatever that,
Yeah.
that freight train of thoughts, whatever comes across next.
Well, I appreciate the time you took out. I know you're in California, so it's like 4 hours, 3 hours behind me.
Yeah,
So
3
you're
hours.
just like getting towards the dinner time hour. No, it's only like 1 o'clock there, 2 o'clock there.
Not quite 2
Jeez,
o'clock.
I'm like living
Lunchtime.
way in the future right now. But I'll let you get on your way. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to tell us about your books. Anybody that's listening, check him out, ConnardHogan.com. Check out his books. Very inspiring stories. I appreciate you coming on here again, and I hope all your books have been well received, and your new one's going to be well received too. Nothing but the best. Thank you for sharing some of your journey and your stories to help somebody else out.
Well, thank you, Jay. It's been a pleasure to meet you and talk with you. I've been very happy to do this, and perhaps we can do it again later.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear what the future holds for you.
Okay. Take care, and goodbye to everyone out there. Walk in beauty.
And that is Rock and Recovery. Tune in next time. See who we got next. Thank you for all joining, and keep your hope. Keep the hope alive. Hold on. Pain does end. That's Rock and Recovery. Later.